Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, this is one of my favorite spaces within the podcast, and that is to welcome our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things that I personally deem very expensive. Time. That time is 24 hours allotted to every single person on this planet, so we cannot argue. But how you treat time, if you've learned to love time, respect time, honor time, it will speak volumes of your life. If you do not, it also speaks. The other is the journey. The journey has who we were and created us and make us this beautiful creature that is before us. And we want to thank Heather for coming to share both of these precious commodities with us. Heather, thank you so much for joining us here at Threads of Enlightenment.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
It's an honor. Tell the folks, how do you serve mankind? I know you have quite a few things. So bring them up to speed, if you will.
So my business is definitely a reflection. The way that I serve is definitely a reflection of my own personal journey. So I have kind of evolved in the way that I serve over these last few years, and so I am. What the best way for me to describe it, and it's funny how we were talking about this before we started recording, is how we're all kind of traumatized in our own ways. So that's a lot of what I work with. I work with the thing that the way that I look at it that resonates with me the most is just helping my clients come back to their home within, or that soul. Just bringing them back and bringing those soul fragments back into place, so that they can feel whole within themselves, so that they can understand themselves, so that they can communicate with themselves clearly, so they can have that intuitive and emotional intelligence to intuitively guide themselves and just really uncover. So something that I like to explain it as is like identity entanglement. So that's what I help my clients kind of untangle, is that identity entanglement. And what that's kind of made up of is external conditioning from what maybe our parents went through, their stories, their programming, and then society, people of influence around us, all of those things that kind of pollute our mind, or our conscious mind, into what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about the world, and what we believe is possible. And then the second part of identity entanglement, this is the part that blocks us from our intuitive guidance, our feminine flow, which whether you're a man or a woman, we all have that feminine and masculine, right? So the masculine is our ability to take the action. The feminine is our ability to flow and imagine and be an imaginative state and relaxation and creation. And so the second part to the identity entanglement that I help my clients, kind of break free from, is that unresolved emotional trauma that will stuff up that feminine flow, that ability to love ourselves fully, accept ourselves fully, and allow ourselves to have that intuitive internal guiding system that we can feel confident in, that we can trust ourselves and trust the universe.
I love it. One of our customs is to go back into the time machine, if you will. And the time machine, we want to revisit your family. It is the place where, as I state, many people call it the family, and you have mom and dad. I look at them sometimes as scientists that are going to experiment on our life because they're bringing their thesis together, and they are now going to impart whatever that thesis is all about. And then you and I are going to grab some fragments of it from mom and dad and from all the others around us. Invite us into your family. What was that unit like?
So, are you asking me like what my family's background is like? Is that, I didn't hear the last part of your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, your family background. What was your family? Invite us to your family and introduce us, if you will. Yeah, introduce us to your family.
So my mom and dad got divorced when I was 2 years old. So I was young. I don't remember their divorce, and I don't remember them being together. So I lived kind of two separate lives my entire life, because I would spend part of the time with my dad and then part of the time with my mom. So my dad was very motherly. He was very emotionally vulnerable. He was a hard worker. He struggled with poverty. Like he could make money. He was a construction worker. He worked really hard, but it was
Yeah.
so strange how his like money stories were. Like he would go to work all week, and then by the weekend he had $0. And
Wow.
so he would, every time, it's like as soon as he would get paid, it's like he could not hold on to that money. So that was something that I really remember growing up, was that he would always struggle with that. And then my mom, she made good money, but she was always in debt. So the money she was making was always going back to this debt. So, and then my mom was not actually that emotionally vulnerable. She actually struggled with alcohol addiction, and she was also she was kind of abandoned by her own mother, especially
Yeah.
emotionally abandoned. And so she was there for me physically, but mentally and emotionally, we could not connect. And so that caused a lot of problems, because I always wanted to be with my dad because he was so loving and he was there for me, even though we kind of, butted heads or whatever, but we had a really close connection. And
Yeah.
so my mom actually always told me that I was like a surprise. Like she did not want to have a second child, and she was like in her mid 30s when she got pregnant with me. So I was not necessarily a wanted pregnancy. And it was like one of those things where she's on birth control. It wasn't supposed to happen, like a complete, like, what the heck is going on? But my dad did not have any children, and she knew he would be a great dad, so she had me for him. Otherwise, I don't know that she would have even had me. But it was all meant to be, right? Like, I'm supposed to be here for a reason.
Well, if they tried to prevent you from coming and you came, I don't think they could have stopped you, could
Yeah.
they? So here is this young woman, this young girl in that mix. That is an interesting mix, and it's a powerful emotional mix to be when you are dancing between the two energies, if you will, going to mom and dad, and so forth, and back and forth. All your life, you stated. As you were doing that, Heather, how was all of that back and forth and a different type of energy beginning to form your personality as you were seeing both of these things? Dad being, you see the poverty there, mom making money, but she's in debt. How did it begin to form you?
Yeah, so there were like a lot of different opposites as well. Like my dad was religious. He was Christian,
Yeah,
Baptist Christian. My mom was not religious. And so there was just so many differences between the two. So growing up for me, what I know it did the most was I learned very quickly to adapt to my surroundings. So I learned
yeah,
how to basically become a chameleon. So I knew who I could be and who I couldn't be around my dad, and I know who I couldn't be and who I could be around my mom. So I knew like what attitude I could have, what personality I could have, what I could talk about, what I couldn't talk about. So I got almost immediately, that was like one of the first skills I had to learn, going back and forth from the different environments, was who I could be with one and who I could
yeah,
be with the other. And so for a very long time, of course, I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. I just, that was like I developed these skills, and that, happened in my
yeah,
friendships and my romantic relationships too. Cause it was just, a very odd egoic skill to have, because it's
yeah,
like, I could just morph into whatever I needed to be to
yeah,
keep myself safe, and I think that
yeah,
that's something a lot of us do, whether we realize it or not. Even whether, and maybe it doesn't necessarily matter if our parents are divorced or not, but maybe I'm sure it plays
yeah,
a role, because you can't get away with as much, right? Because it's like, if they're together, they're both like getting to know you and watching you, and you can't really be two different people. But like when they're separate, you have like a little bit more room to be a completely different person without them connecting on it.
yeah. That's really fascinating. I remember a friend of mine, every time he dated someone, he would be a chameleon and adjust to them, which was very funny. A bunch of us, we used to laugh because if the girl is smoking, he smokes. If she's doing this, he does that. And we're like, what in the world are you doing? But yeah, I get it. I actually saw it with my own eyes, and all of us, I think everybody is an actor to a degree because we know how to act when we're at work. We know how to act when we're with this person and that person. And so, yeah, it's a skill that I think that is common amongst men and human race. I mean, um, and we're good at it, and so we are able to make the adjustment. So here you are, this girl, making the adjustment and doing all the things necessary to survive and stay on top of her game. And she's now moving through life. Um, let's say high school. How did you relate to all the others being this chameleon, as you stated, um, and you're able to adjust as all of that? How did you feel when you were managing yourself in there? And you mentioned that there's the ego to it. How did it make you feel, if you will?
So I think by the time high school came around, so it's funny through the phases of my life. So in the beginning, like in middle school and my younger years, I
Yeah,
really did my best to mold myself into what I thought my dad would want more than my mom, because my dad was kinder to me, he was more patient with me, and it seemed like he
yeah,
was there for me more. So I leaned more on his side of the way the world works, right? And
yeah,
I tried to adapt to that more, and that only made mine and my mom's relationship even harder. Well, by the time I got into high school, I really started to think for myself. Even though I didn't even realize it,
hmm,
I was thinking for myself. So I started looking out for myself even more, because I guess like my dad, even though he was my best friend, he had issues, and
yeah,
unfortunately, he actually was he sexually assaulted me, not assaulted, but whatever, when I was very young, and I think he thought that I didn't remember it. And so
yeah,
I walked through life loving him and forgiving him or whatever, but only because I felt like he was all I had, kind of thing. And
yeah,
he was always
yeah,
there for me. So, but I was very closed off as well. I was very scared. I didn't trust him. I never knew when he would maybe do something wrong again. All those things. So when I got into high school, I didn't trust my mom. I didn't feel like my mom loved me. I didn't trust my dad. I knew my dad loved me, but I didn't trust him. I had to be the boss in that situation. So I started really
yeah,
thinking for myself, and I started reading the Bible. I started doing different things, and none of anything made sense to me. So I just started kind of making stuff up as I went when I got into high school.
yeah,
I had very extreme, like, anxious attachment issues. Like, I really felt like I needed to be with someone at all times. I had a lot of trouble being alone. I was very codependent. And I was also
yeah,
afraid of men, I guess, in a way. Like, I
yeah,
didn't trust them very much. I was attracted to men, but I didn't really want to be with them. They were, I don't know, they seemed aggressive. They seemed very sexually aggressive, and that was something I wasn't quite ready for. So I actually ended up
yeah,
being with women during high school, because I
yeah,
needed that, like, attention and that connection, and I felt safer with women. So I
yeah,
inevitably dated women throughout my high school career. And I literally just laid low, because I was also overweight when I was in high school. So I was bullied, and I kind of felt like an outcast, and I always felt like I was much older than my grade. So
yeah,
I couldn't relate with people. And by the time high school came around, I stopped trying to relate with just
yeah,
anybody, and I kind of kept to myself. And I just found like my best friend or my girlfriend, and I just kind of stuck with them, and I let everybody else just kind of move around me, and I just kind of focused on whatever I felt like I needed to in the moment. That was kind of my high school experience.
And as you are there and you're completing your high school and you're heading into college, and you're looking out to the world now because you need to, as they say, expand your wings, and you picked your destination. How did it come about, Heather, and why did you pick that particular destination to go to?
So I had an issue with authority, and I didn't like to work with other people, like, or for other people. And my mom and my dad were both entrepreneurs, and they had their own
Yeah.
businesses. So I know, growing up, just watching my parents being in control of like what they do and how they do it, and then also like that kind of being my own personality too, having trouble conforming by that point in time
Yeah.
to that type of authority or employment. I had a steady job in high school, and I graduated high school early, and I became a hairdresser. Now, I became a hairdresser because, number one, I knew I could like have my own salon, I could do my own thing, but I also did not want to be in a typical job. Like, I wanted to be
Yeah.
in something where I could be creative, where I could have fun. I was more, I don't know, like the left brain, right brain, whatever that is. I'm
Yeah.
more like, I learn well when I am creating or when I'm having to think imaginatively versus
Mm-hmm.
numbers. Like, I loved math and I loved science, but I don't want to be like, even today in my business, like, I feel better when I'm here in this kind of situation, like talking with somebody or working with my clients. But then the minute I have to do
Yeah.
like ads or emails or whatever, like, I know how to do them, but they're not my favorite thing to do. So it's like that technical side of stuff. It's not
Yeah.
my jam. You know what I'm saying? So being a
Yeah.
hairdresser, I I got off easier in high school. I was able to spend most of my time getting hours in high school. So I was already really like 3/4 of the way there to getting my license by the time I graduated high school. So I graduated early, went to beauty school, got my license immediately, and started working. So I was out of high school and into my career by the time I was 18 years old. And so it was kind
Wow.
of like, I liked it because it was like I can be creative, I can have the freedom that I'm looking for, I can evolve the way that I want to evolve, and I'm on the fast track to getting out of here and getting my stuff started. So that's kind of why I did it at that time.
So here you are. You are in the field, and I consider that hairdressers and um, I call bartenders. These are some of the most professional life coaches around on this planet. So here you are as a young girl, 18, being exposed to all these different stories, if you will, all of these different situations as your clients are bringing them to you. They are dealing with all those emotional things. And you're hearing all these wonderful soap operas, if you will. How did you manage yourself in there? Because I know one of my best friends, um, he is a hairdresser, hair salon. He has one out in Orlando that's pretty famous, and a bunch of those guys there. So I'm familiar with the energy there. How was Heather in that mix every day, every night? How was she doing?
So I evolved very quickly in my career as a hairdresser. I worked for somebody for my first year, and then I immediately got out of that and went into just owning my own thing. So I worked under somebody for the first year, and then I went and did like booth rental for the second year, which I'm basically in
Mm-hmm.
control of everything. And then I actually found a studio and opened up my own studio. So the environments were different. Number one, but
Yeah.
depending on where I worked. So when I was working under someone, it was very quick. I didn't really get a lot of personal intellect with my clients until I actually went and ventured out onto my own, and I was in my own studio. Now,
Mm-hmm.
what's actually crazy is I don't know that I have a typical hairdresser story, because 2 weeks after I opened my salon, my dad died. And
Wow.
I kind of went on I guess it's like all about me kind of situation. So a lot of my clients, not that they didn't talk about their issues with me, but it was almost, if they did talk about their issues with me, it helped me escape from my own pain, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I actually
Yeah.
was just able to be very present and just be able to, I didn't really absorb their stuff because from my perspective, my life was going way worse than anybody else's life. Not that that's
Yeah.
necessarily true, but compared to what I was hearing versus what I was experiencing, I I was
Yeah.
just able to be actually more like in a position where I could help them feel better because I was like, well, you could have it like this, but without saying that, like I could help them see the
Yeah.
brighter side of it, even though I couldn't help myself see the brighter side of things. And then not
Yeah.
long after my dad died, I got pregnant, and my pregnancy was crazy. And I ended up having really bad postpartum depression. And the person that I had my child with, they came out to me as transgender when my daughter was 4 months old. So that person essentially that I married and had a child with, who I thought I was marrying and who I thought I was, creating a future with, no longer existed. And that period of going from my dad dying to my pregnancy to my traumatic divorce, I don't remember much of anything. I mean, I remember doing hair and I remember being really good at it, but all I remember is trying to survive because I was so depressed, and work was more of an escape than anything for me during that period.
Here you are, you're surrounded by death in so many different ways. Your death of your marriage, death of your father, death of your dreams, in the sense of, you have dreams as a couple and a family, all of this, and you are at your studio and you're in the midst of all of these people, and of course the depression and all those things are hitting you. How the heck did you survive, Heather? How did you make it?
So at first, I'll be honest, I smoked a lot of weed. A lot of weed, and that helped me cope
Somebody,
for a very
you
long
got to
time.
find your vice, girl.
Yeah,
You got to
no,
find
I'm
your
serious.
vice.
I'm very
Everybody got to
thankful
find
for
their
that
vice.
period. I'm like 3 years sober to like coming up soon, so I'm very thankful for
Yeah,
everything that's happened.
congratulations.
But smoking weed helped me survive at that period in time, and it's actually all what got me out of hairdressing and into what I do today. Because once
Yeah,
I lost my marriage, and now I'm alone, but now I have an infant. I'll be honest. If I didn't have my husband when my dad died, I probably would have checked out. And then if I had not had my
yeah,
daughter when my husband stopped existing, I would have definitely checked out. And so all of it
yeah,
was placed so beautifully for me to have, like, to feel, like, ethically feel and like morally feel like I have no choice but to keep going. And
yeah,
so I was smoking actually so much that one night after I put my daughter to bed, I was smoking and my heart started to palpitate irregularly. And I heard a voice like ringing in my ears. And it was like, you can let your daughter watch you die, or you can let her watch you change and heal and create something different.
wow,
And that moment was the first time in my life ever that I realized I had a choice in what my life looked like
hmm,
and who I was and how I was going to experience this world. And I became really interested in that thought of I have a choice here, because up until that point, I thought everything was just happening to me and I had no choice in it. I thought
yeah,
my dad just died for no reason. I thought I was like a terrible person in a past life, and I was like just living karma because everything bad was happening to me. It seemed like it was like, why me? I was in that victim state for so long until that choice was presented to me. And it's like, I definitely feel like it was my dad like talking to me, because at this point it was it was a little over a year since he had passed, almost moving into 2 years since he had passed. And at that point, I just feel like he was like, hey, you've got a choice right now. Like, you're about to kill yourself because you are so stressed. You are so malnourished. All you do is smoke. You are literally harming yourself. You don't care about yourself. You're not taking care of yourself. This is going to kill you. So your daughter is going to watch you die, or she's going to watch you heal and change and create something new. And I became obsessed with figuring out what change and how do I change? How do I heal? I became obsessed with the how questions, and thus led me to every book and program and certification that I have today.
Here you are. That's a beautiful story, Heather, because you had your awakening, your appointment, and the question. And I always tell people it's always a question that will open us up to the possibilities. Here you are. You had this question: are you going to choose now, or are you just going to die? As you said, you began to hunt the information. What information and what tools did you bring into your space to start helping you out? Was it meditation? What were those tools as you were gathering knowledge? Did you bring into your space to help you move
So the
through
first
into
thing that
choice
came
now?
to me when I started asking these questions is I started noticing how ill I was towards myself. Almost every other thought in my brain was punishing me. I was basically asking myself, like, why are you so stupid? Why do you, like, why are you so ugly? I didn't realize that I had no awareness of this, but that voice, like, I hated myself so much. And so when I started asking myself, well, how do I heal? And then I became instantly aware of that inner dialogue that I had, and it was so mean and so negative. I
Yeah,
asked another question. I was like, well, what if I treated myself differently? What if everybody treats me so bad? And what if I attract such negativity because of the way I talk to myself? What if I
yeah,
try to be kinder to myself? That was like my first question. I didn't read a book. It just kind of came to me that way. Like, I just was like curious.
yeah.
Well, what if I tried to be nicer? So from that point, I started saying, every time I would notice I'm being mean, I would call myself stupid or a name or whatever. I was being hard on myself. I would stop and pause, and I would say the opposite. And if I couldn't say the opposite, I would look for evidence that something else and more empowering or more positive was true in that situation. So it's like, if I felt stupid or ignorant, I would say, well, I'm learning and I'm proud of myself. I'm doing the best job. So even if
Yeah.
I couldn't say I'm smart or I'm a genius, right? Like, I couldn't move all the way to the opposite because that just felt like crap. I would just do something in the middle where it felt true and I could look at myself from a different angle for a moment. And I just kept
Yeah.
forcing myself to do that. And so then the first thing, because this whole idea of, well, what if I was kinder to myself, or what if I loved myself more, was coming to me, the first thing that I did was listen to a self-love meditation. And it was
Yeah.
the turning point. Once I'd tried meditation before when my dad died, but it's like I couldn't focus. It's like I couldn't be
Hmm.
present with it. But I was finally alone at this point, and I was like actually actively aware and questioning things. So I was like
Yeah.
really committed to listening to the meditation and following it through and doing what I was being told to do. And so this meditation guided me to meet my younger self and my older self. And it was just a really incredible experience of, holy crap, of how disconnected I was and how much I don't understand about who I am, and never really took a moment to understand that. And so I did that self-love meditation, and like I said, I just started buying books. I ended up landing into the opportunities to get my certification as a life and health coach. I got my life and health coach certification and my meditation instructor certification and my energy healing certification all at the same time. I was in school for all three different schools all at the same time. I went back to school full
Wow.
time. And I left my salon. Like once I found out what self-love was and like started on my own self-love journey, I was like, I'm out of here. I
Yeah.
closed my business down. I just stopped working. I paid off all my debt, and I just like, hustled on the side for like for whatever I
Yeah.
needed to just pay the little bills that I had, so I could go back to school full time and
Yeah.
totally like dive in, commit, pursue. At the beginning, I was like, I'm just gonna go off the grid. Like that was like my whole goal. But then when I was introduced into, going back to school for the things that I was learning
Yeah.
and beginning to master for myself to show other people how to do it, I was like, oh, that's it. I don't have to go off the grid. I'm gonna go back to school, actually.
That is a powerful story, yeah, because those are powerful tools that you started to bring into your life, meditation, especially, and loving the self, going on that journey. I remember mine. It took me some time to learn to give up shame and all the other things that I felt while I was in the process of growing. And I remember when I had discontinued dating for about a year or so that I could focus on myself to
Yeah,
learn to
I
love
was
me
I was
regardless of
completely celibate. I didn't date anybody for over a year.
same thing.
I
Yeah.
went total. I was like, I'm gonna be a monk mom because I was a mom, so I couldn't be like full monk. So I was like, I was considered myself a
Yeah.
monk mom. So I was like, I was sober, celibate, no dating, no talking to anybody. I was totally in hermit self discovery mode for a little over a year myself. So yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah, I did that though when at the height of when all my friends and I were partying. I was like, I can't do it. And so I stopped dating, but I would go out at night and the girls would come to me and I would hook up all my friends with the girls because I would tell them, no, I'm celibate. I am not doing anything for a year. And so after one of my friends, I remember my friends were all looking at me like it was, kind of strange. Um, but after I went past that, and one of my friends, after he got into a situation, and he did it, and then he called me up and he said, "Now I understand what happened," because he said it was I grew faster. I was exposed to so much about myself, and so it's very necessary that people do this because you will learn so much about who you are. So here you are, Heather, you're studying. You are, I mean, studying. My God, you are just drinking up everything possible that you can get your hands on as you're doing this. Now, as you began to do all of that studying and depositing within yourself, what did you see started to happen to you as a woman now with gaining knowledge, insights, and stuff? What changes did you started recognizing and going, wow, this is happening?
So what I found was really interesting is as I learned things, it's a skill that I've always had in every job that I've ever done. I I usually don't necessarily like all of the methods that, there's like bits and pieces of things like I'll take and I'll kind of morph it into my own thing. So, I learned a lot about shadow work and, emotions, awareness, consciousness, energy, all of these things. And I kind of stepped back, and every time I would learn a little bit, I would go and apply it to myself. And I would also just kind of record the process of how I was doing it, what I was experiencing. And so what kind
Hmm.
of happened eventually was I moved out of lack and resentment, anger, and victimization, and I moved into forgiveness and compassion and understanding and acceptance. And what this did was it shifted my energy from why is this happening to, oh my gosh, I can't believe all this happened for me. And so that shifted my
Yeah.
energy into gratitude and prosperity and abundance. And so that was one of the biggest shifts that came from the work. immediately. That was one of the quickest and the most powerful shifts that came. And, then from that experience, all of those little things that I'd been learning along the way, what I eventually did was I kind of broke it down into a step-by-step process. And so I figured out, like, okay, what is important? What is like the first phase? Like, where does somebody need to really be able to start in order for them to move into phase 2 and so on? And so from that point of me just taking different steps of things that I've learned and recording those processes, and then noticing how I'm more emotionally stable, more emotionally intelligent towards others, towards myself, more emotionally connected, more intuitively driven, more prosperous frequency. Like, I have a prosperity frequency instead of a lack frequency. I'm seeing things from miracles and blessings perspective versus, why is things so expensive, or why is this so hard, or why am I struggling? And I started to really balance the yin and the yang energy within myself. And I started to fall in love with the hard times, the challenges, the dark side, and really just started fully embracing all of life. And so what inevitably that did was it allowed me to, that recording that process and really just making things my own and putting my own perspective and my own understanding on it, I was able to be like, okay, someone who wants to go on this journey and be successful, they need to start here. They need to let this stuff come to the surface. They need to go here and they need to understand what they want to experience first and foremost. And how we need to understand experience is we look at what are we currently experiencing? What are the current feelings and thoughts about all of the areas of our life? How do we feel in our health? How do we feel in our relationships? How do we feel in our career, finances, spirituality, areas of importance? What are we experiencing currently? What's not going well? What are we feeling, right? Because obviously if we're on a journey of transformation, we have to be honest about those things. We have to be honest about where we feel we're currently at. We have to kind of dig into those stories. And so some of my clients will come and they'll say, well, on Sundays, a lot of my clients will come to me and they are very aware that there's some things of like anger and victimization, but they're aware of it and they want to gain control of it. Mm-hmm. They want to gain understanding of it. They want to process it and not let it kind of take them over. They want to understand their emotional triggers and they want to become more emotionally connected. So in order for us to do that, the only way through is through. So the first phase of the process is all about, let's dig into what are you experiencing and what would you like to experience instead. And then it's very important, I believe, as a mom. I'm a business owner, I'm a partner, I have family, like I'm busy, I'm a busy woman, and a lot of my clients are the same. So it's very important to me that my clients are able to balance their own personal development, prioritizing themselves with their children, their lovers, their career, and all the other responsibilities they have of being a homeowner and all of the other things of just life in general. And so, it's funny going back to like, I want to be a monk. I was calling myself a monk mom. I basically wanted to, I became obsessed, and I believe it kind of manifested into reality. I became obsessed with how do I be a monk in active society? And that's essentially what I kind of teach my clients. And it's very important. It's the first phase is figuring out where you are at experience and energy wise, where you want to be, and how are we going to balance this journey with your life, with the high stress, with the responsibility. And then once we figure out a plan that feels good for the nervous system to balance all of that out, we move into phase 2, which is going deeper into that current experience. Where is this coming from? What does that inner child need? What do we need to understand about our parents? What do we need to forgive? What do we need to nurture? What do we need to understand? What do we need to get curious about? What do we need to heal? What do we need to change perspectives on? How do we need to zoom out and see ourselves from God's eyes. And then we can go back into basically what this does is I like to say phase 3 is like the mastery phase, because now the whole period we're going to be focusing on kind of the most important thing. So obviously the first time you go through, you're not going to heal everything in one go. But the beautiful thing is you now know how to heal it. So now we move into mastery, where we're going in and we're just doing the tools over and over and over again until we become a master of our soul healing. And so essentially phase 1 is just doing the most painful, the hardest, the things that are holding us back the most, the things that are keeping us in a lower frequency of energy, of that anger or that victim. And we're freeing ourselves. We're freeing our soul from those shackles in the first phase. And then I stay with my clients for a bit and we move into mastery. So now we're just going deeper. We're applying everything that we're learning and we're building muscle memory. So now it moves from a state of I have to journal this and I have to be very like step-by-step process to as soon as something is happening, I know what to do. It's now a mental thing. It is now it is now a way of being. So we move from just learning it and practicing it into mastery, into a way of being. So that way you can navigate life's challenges no matter what is coming your way. So you know, and you also know what to do. So you can go back to journaling if you need to, and sometimes we do. But for the most part, it just becomes your new operating system of how you handle challenges, crises, aversions. And it's very important. And I'm actually living proof of how much it works, because not only did I go through all of that trauma to get here this past year, my mom got sick. I became a caregiver on top of a business owner, on top of a mother, on top of a partner, on top of everything else. And then she died. And I'm still here. And it is because of what I do. I am still solid. And it is because of what I do.
Yeah.
And it is the most important work that I've ever done for myself. And that's why I do it for other people. I want other people to go through it as well. It's just important.
Yeah, everyone that is listening to us, and I always tell people, try your best to transition from listening to hearing, because when you hear it, you'll become actively involved in pursuing what you want. And Heather just laid out an entire process by which she will be able to guide you and to bring you into that space of becoming a master. And when one gets to that place, it is habit. It becomes, as she said, your modus operandus. That's how you are. And when you get there, life begins to. It does some things to you, and it brings you into a place where you are beginning to enjoy. There's this joy that you're working about. She talked about thankfulness and all these beautiful, beautiful states that you put yourself in as you're growing and changing in your life to bring your desired outcome. And all of you that are listening to us, we're going to provide Heather's information because she just laid it out for you guys. And as she stated, she's living proof that it works. And you heard her story. This is one of the reasons why we have these stories here at Threads of Enlightenment, so that you can hear what that individual went through and how they were able to move through all of that. And as Heather said, one of my things is the dark times. And I would tell people, why do you need to be afraid of the dark times? The dark times will cause you to rely on your creator that is in you, that you didn't know existed until the dark times come, because that creator is looking at you going, let me have it. Let me do it. I can do it. Just step out of my way. And that is the transition. The stepping out of the way is when you move from your natural mind, your thinking, and you start to trust your subconscious mind, your belief. This is who you are. And when you begin to make that switch, they call it from the mind to the heart. When you make that switch, it will change your life. And here's a woman that has gone through. She's a mother. She has her partner. She's an entrepreneur, a business owner. She had a caregiver, all of that, and yet she was able to manage herself. Heather, I just want to thank you so much. I mean, you just laid out everything that the listeners need to know how to become a master of their situation. And thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Yeah, no, of course. And it is just the truth. It is just my truth, and it's just so important. And that's why I do what I do, and I look for opportunities like this to share it, because I know that if I can go from thinking that I'm not going to be anything in this world, not caring about myself, to being able to handle the hardest things that are going to happen to you in this life and not let it take me out of my own growth, my own personal development, and my own self-love, anybody can. And it's very important that they learn these tools.
I agree 100%. Again, thank you so much for coming.
Yes. Do you want me to share a little bit about how you can kind of come into my world at all?
Share. Yeah.
So the
Yeah,
best
go ahead,
place
because
to
I'm going
kind
to
of
provide all of your stuff as well, but go ahead.
Yeah. I just want to invite people to come into my group. I have a free group. It's on Facebook. It's called Soul Alchemy Healing Hub. And I do a lot of free weekly lives just going on about different tools, different topics. And then I also do master classes and events every few months. They're all free and in the group. So that's the best place to get those resources. And then I'm also on Facebook at facebook.com/holistic healer Heather.
That is awesome. We're going to also provide all of that information to them so that they'll have access to you, so that they can gain and become masters of their life and change it, because that's why we're here. And thank you again, Heather, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.